Hello again, this is Bill Lindeman with the Believers Business Center show. I'm here with two guests tonight. My regular Carrie Sluiter from the Believers Business Center, the founder of the Believers Business Center, and Mike Siver, who's a reality therapist and who is an owner of Blue Seahorse Incorporated. And you do a lot of therapy, what's called reality therapy, or working with people.
Yes.
What do you call it?
Well, counseling or
Counseling?
looking at behaviors,
Uh-huh.
looking at performance and how they perform in their life.
Uh-huh.
And we do that with reality therapy.
Okay, yes. And Carrie, do you want to say a few things this evening? I know your topic is broken families raising children.
Broken
which
families.
is a lot of
Yes.
people need to know about.
Yes, we have a
Okay.
lot of things going on within the families these days, and you know, we had talked about bringing the Word of God into our show and guiding people and teaching people how to relate the Bible to life and living. And with having Mike here tonight, he is also a Christian who applies some scriptural background to his teaching. But anyways, we have broken families and raising children. One of the major things that our world is dealing with right now. And I looked up some statistics on this, and the statistics I found was 12 out of every 100 families was going through divorce or had divorce within their family in 1950. 58 of every 100 in 1992. And those numbers are raising since 1992.
I was going to say, when you
Where are
mentioned
they
the
now?
first number, I said, that doesn't
12
sound
of
right.
every 100
That was in
families.
1950.
1950. 58 of every 100
Yeah.
was in 1992.
Right.
I didn't keep going. I don't even want to know
Sure.
what it is today.
Sure.
Almost, at least half of our public is dealing with that. So almost half of our Americans are dealing with poverty after the divorce. Those were some of the things that I found in the research, and there was a lot of information on how they reached the poverty level due to the divorce. There's so many crises within our world and our immediate families that we're dealing with based on those. You know, the divorce itself causes people to sell their home. You know, the other things that they have for 25 years worked for is now divided and used to pay the expenses of the divorce, or divided between the spouses. So those things are on top of that. Then your assets are gone. At 40, 50 years old, you've got kids, you're starting over with new homes. So this is putting a lot of stress on the families. One of the things that I found that was very interesting is that they say that the death of a parent is less devastating to the family and the children than a divorce. Would you agree with that, Mike?
I agree with that 100%.
I do too. I found that was just an amazing thing, and I like the way that they said that. It made a lot of sense to me that it is more devastating than the death, because we're dealing with a lot of things outside of that. Raising children, we're dealing with the different things within the family, the parents not getting along. So I'm going to let Mike do some talking to us and sharing on the subject of, we had talked about the parents trying to work together after the divorce and how that affects the children. So.
Well, as we were talking earlier, people get born and raised and grow up with preparation for getting married. In most cases, they find a significant other and they form a family. There's not any preparation for divorce, because people don't go into marriage to get divorced. People don't go into marriage to get divorced. They go into marriage to stay married, and no one says, oh, I'll be married for 10 years and I'll divorce you. That doesn't happen. But when it does happen, for whatever the reasons are, no one is prepared for that. They're not financially prepared for it. They're not emotionally prepared for it. And as you said, it's a financial destruction in most families. And it's also emotionally destructing in most families. That's between the two adults, because it's coming to terms with, did I make a bad choice? Now you may be trying to accept failure in your life. I failed at my marriage. It wasn't successful. So the two adults are trying to come to terms with their own issues, and now there's children involved. So how do you deal with something of a separation from your spouse, a divorce in the end from your significant other, and dealing with that emotionally and financially, and now trying to raise children at the same time and give children the attention they need? And as we talked about in a relationship, in a family, raising children, I believe the goal is to be continuously firm, fair, and consistent. But how can you be that way when you're trying to survive?
Sure.
When people go into a survival mode, it's self-centered. You're trying to keep your head above water, you're trying to keep food on the table, you're trying to keep a roof over your head, and at the same time raise children appropriately, teach them the rights from wrongs, help them understand what happened. Because like you mentioned, Carrie, in a death in the family, there's a pretty much set procedure you go through: grief and loss. You grieve for a while, you suffer the loss of a loved one, and it takes longer for some people, but it's a pretty much standard format. Now, with the grief and loss, people don't relate that to divorce.
Right.
Children go through a grief and loss. But people don't understand that. They don't accept that. They don't deal with that until it becomes so out of control that a third party is brought in, like myself or Carrie or someone else, to deal with a family that's out of control.
Sure.
Then a psychologist or a psychiatrist will deal with the children in dealing with their loss of their parent, the other parent, or being divided between parents, and trying to deal with, as we talked earlier, one parent tries to buy the child, the other parent tries to love the child. And that creates so much confusion, and children usually end up running the houses when it gets to that stage.
Right.
They will go to mom and say, well, Dad buys me this, Dad bought me this, I can do this at Dad's house, I don't have to go to bed at 9 o'clock, I can stay up all night. And mom says no. Moms tend to be, in most cases, the more educational one, who wants the children to understand education, the power of education, and right from wrong, whereas a lot of dads are focused on work and providing, because we're the providers. Men are the providers of the family, and they don't divorce that from their children. When they have their child on every other weekend or every other week or however that works, their life doesn't change. So they go to work, they come home, they go to work, they come home, they go to work, they come home, and they're still doing the same thing they did when they were married.
Yes.
Whereas women tend to become more involved in the family and in the children when they're there, and they worry more about what's happening when they're not there.
Sure.
Some fathers do as well, so please don't get me wrong. But in most cases, it's the women who try and bear the burden of being firm, fair, and consistent. You know, when you're in this house, you eat at the table at the right time, you say your prayers before you go to bed, you pray before the meal, you go to bed on time, you come home from school, do your homework first. A lot of dads don't get that. And Carrie and I are working on programs and trying to bring that awareness to families, that when you divorce, there needs to be some preparation.
Right.
And sure, sometimes judges will say, well, you go to marriage counseling first. You know, I'm not going to grant you divorce until you at least try to patch up this relationship. And if that works, that's great for the children. Because I'm a great believer in, once you bring children into the world as a family, then they now become your priority.
Yes.
Your life now revolves around them. Not about what I want and my fishing boat and my motorcycle and my new dress or whatever it is. It's about the kids. They have to feel safe and secure in their family, in their environment, in order to grow to maturity. And grow to maturity with understanding, not just knowing right from wrong, but understanding right from wrong,
Yes.
which is a big difference. And that creates nice people when they grow up, and they can then find, they tend to look for a different type of person when they understand right from wrong and what's positive and what's negative. We try not to bring too much negativity into it, because it's hard for children to understand that this relationship is no longer valid. It's destructive. But children don't understand that.
Right.
More damage would be done by some parents staying together
Sure.
than it would be by them separating. But to get both parents to be equally share the responsibility of raising the child and communicating, which is the big thing. Because it's a shame in a lot of divorces and family separations, it's a them and us. I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy, or vice versa. So the kids don't understand why mom says bad things about dad all the time, or dad says bad things about mom all the time. To them, they're just mom and dad.
Sure.
And when that starts to happen, then the kids learn that if I like dad more and tell him that, I will get more stuff. I will get more things. The rules won't be quite as strong.
Sure.
And you've experienced a lot
The
of
kids
that.
want to be at the ease of their parents.
Yeah.
You know, well, of course you want to go there because you can play. You don't have the same rules. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to do your homework and, you know, things like that. So
It's difficult for kids and parents, really, and that's part of what Carrie and I are trying to do, is bring this awareness to families. And I'm not sitting here saying we want to support divorce, because I don't.
Right.
You know, there are cases where it needs to happen for the safety of everybody, but because sometimes people get off track and they can't get back on track, and that's really hard to handle sometimes. But when children are involved, it has much more meaning to it. And a lot of people don't, they get out of the relationship and say, oh, whew, I'm out of the relationship now. But then children suffer from that.
the whole, everything about your life changes instantly. You know, there's so many things that change within the relationship and within the family that we all have to, everyone has to reestablish who they are, what they do within the course of their life. And don't forget too, then there's the mother who now has to support her household and raise the children. And if it's a weekend dad, then you know that's a lot on the mother, and she still has the same responsibilities as of the laundry and those things, you know, and to make the living and all that. So what are some of the things that you could suggest, Mike, that may give some idea what a person could do if things are already out of bounds? You have see a lot of families who have already lost control. They're frustrated, irritated. One of the things that I did when I saw things were not going the way that I wanted them to be, weren't as smooth, when I realized that I had not been praying for the children as much, praying for God to cover those things. I was not praying for my ex-husband and his understanding of the situation. And the minute I started focusing on that, for me, I always turn everything back to the Word. What am I doing wrong? Because I'm not getting the result. But are there some other things that people can do where you could, how do you become friends with a spouse if they were already at each other's throats and ruin that relationship to communicate?
Well,
Ask it that way.
there's really only a couple ways. Is obviously the best one is they both are willing to communicate. All right, we're not going to live together anymore, and it doesn't work. So let's separate for the safety of everybody and a positive future, and let's still raise them as parents. I'll communicate to you when the children come over, what they do, what they say. We'll get them to school on time. We'll make sure that their days the routine doesn't change. Whatever happens in one house will happen in the other house. If bedtime is 7 o'clock at night, then it's the same in both houses. If we going to do this on the weekend, then it's the same on both weekends. The difficulty with that, as you mentioned, a lot of times today there's both people work, both spouses work to provide the income to support the home. Well, when that happens, you got half your income. Now you've lost half your income already. So each one is trying to do the same exact thing they were doing before with half their incomes. And that makes it really tough unless they communicate together and share the burden of responsibility of the children, buying clothes, buying books, transporting them back and forth, and sharing that. It doesn't seem like quite the burden it would be if you're doing it by yourself. And the other way that it can be done is if the courts sometimes order parenting classes for parents who are divorcing, and they have a mediator comes in and talk to them about this is what's going to happen, and they come to an agreement. A lot of times, sometimes, I shouldn't say a lot of times, sometimes the agreement the mediator comes to, they both agreed to it, but one of them really hasn't.
Sure.
They really haven't.
Right.
I agree to all that,
Right. We took the classes.
but in their head, they don't really agree to it.
Sure.
And that's when trouble starts, when it's over. I'm not sure what the answer to that one, whether it would be a follow-up after the agreement, like in 6 months, is this still working? But that's the courts then getting involved in their family once they're divorced. And I don't know how that would sit very well. The best thing is for both parents to agree that they have children. And the children need to have consistency in their life.
I was just going to say, ever since you mentioned it, I've been thinking about that. Firm, fair, and consistent. If everybody that is divorced could remember that involving their children, it would make it so much easier to keep that in mind. Firm, fair, and consistent. The kids need that.
They do. We all need that early in our life.
yes.
We need that when you're as an employer or an employee. We need it all through our lives because we tend to survive or are happier in a consistent environment.
Sure.
Routine.
Routine. Oh, you don't want a routine to be so routine it's boring, but in a relationship, whether it be an employee, employer, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, if you're firm and you're fair and you're consistent, then nobody gets hurt. It's an agreed upon and talked about negotiation all the time, because what's firm for one may not be firm for the other.
Sure.
So it has to be firm in that they both agree. That's a different type of firmness.
Yeah.
And fair to both parties and consistent. And the kids are the focus of everything that they need to do. And as Carrie and I both see in both our walks in our lives, and especially in my practice, it's so rough out there sometimes for the kids. And then as they grow, they learn to split the parents. They learn to get what they want by being nice to one or the other.
Sure.
And then a lot of times, if the child can wake up by himself, which a lot of them do, then things are okay. But if they don't, it's a struggle until they grow up and they get out and they realize, okay, Mom gave me all this stuff to make me like her, to make me want to be there.
Yeah.
But Dad was the firm one. Dad was always there. He didn't give me what I didn't need. He gave me what I didn't want. He gave me what I needed only. I got through, everything's fine. Or vice versa. Dads are usually the ones that buy the most. You know, the most liberal with their rules and regulations and what they can wear, what they don't wear. Moms are usually the ones who are more, you can't smoke in my house. Sometimes dads don't care.
Sure.
Well, if you're going to smoke, do it outside. Well, Mom says, you're not going to smoke at all. So they have to be on the same page. And unless they are, this is where I get into my practice a lot of the clients that I get that are 17, 18, 19 years old for substance abuse, DUIs, anger management, because they haven't had any training on how to manage their anger. And it gets out of control. And I just had a client that I've dealt with for quite a while who he's on medication to control his anger because he wasn't ever taught
Sure.
And he says that. He knows. He says, I didn't have to control my anger. I could do what I wanted to at home. Nobody did anything. If I got mad, they all ran away. So I could chase everybody away just by getting mad.
And it's so much harder to correct that when you're older. So much harder.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these things that we're seeing and dealing with, though, are stemmed from this day and time: the divorce rates, the broken families, the lack of consistency in the home structure,
Yeah.
and a lot of these different issues are really showing in those, in the challenges that we're facing out there in the world with kids who are disobedient. For example, you have two parents that are living in different households. One allows this, the other one doesn't. We don't realize what we're creating in that child, because when the child can go back to the other parent and get away with something,
Yeah.
that they can't with the other one, they play the parents back and forth. Well, you can't hit me, you can't spank me. Well, they run to the other parent. She spanked me, or she smacked my hand. So we battle that with the world the way it is today too. And when you take that all back to the biblical side of it, where everything we're doing now with those divorces and the lack of communication, we're doing all those things that are keys to success from the Bible standpoint as well.
Yep.
Because when we're cursing the other spouse or the ex in front of the kids, we're calling those things that are not as though they are. We're reaping what we're sowing.
Yep.
So we're doing all those little things that are Bible related anyways. And we're raising up, the Bible says we're raising up a generation of vipers. How can we pull back the reins with our children in this day and time, and to help the audience to raise their children up in the nurturing admonition of the Lord as well?
Well, one of the things I get concerned about is if the two parents can't get on the same page after they're divorced
Right.
and raise their children consistently, when they get older, then like you said, Bill, you've got to try and change the child or change the young adult
Change the
completely, because whatever they're doing is not working. And then you ask the parents, what role did you play in raising this child appropriately? And don't give me the blame game. Well, it was her fault. Oh, it's his fault. Because we all, we play the blame game. Oh, I wouldn't have got divorced if she, if she, or he, if he. So we play the blame game, and then we blame the kids. We tell the kids it's the other person's fault, and it's all about us because we're playing that game. And if we can ask ourselves, which is also we try and ask people to look at their lives, is what role did you play in that?
Yes.
You played a good role in the getting married part. You played a big part in having the kids. Now, what role are you playing in not making this work? Where does your responsibility stop? And we teach kids that they don't have to have responsibility if we're trying to buy them.
Right.
Or if you're doing everything for them.
Yeah. 'Cause they don't have to earn anything. It's just given to them.
Yes.
And I hate to always use the saying, oh, back in my day, you didn't get anything unless you worked for it. I wanted a new bike, I had to get a paper route and walk my paper route until I got my enough money to buy my bike.
Absolutely.
So that's the way it was. And I didn't like it, but I did it, and now I look back on it, and it taught me a little bit of something. I can't get something without working for it.
Right.
And unless we teach that to our children and give them responsibility to look at what role are they playing, and teaching the parents to ask the kids that, and asking the parents to ask themselves that, then we can start looking at raising the child or children in a firm, fair, and consistent environment, which is what needs to happen. And then you add the most important component to that is a spiritual component, and raise them according to the word of the Lord. You really can't go wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
You can't go wrong. And because in my jail ministry, when I talked to the inmates, if you'd have followed what it says in here and not gone off it, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
Because there's nothing in there that's going to get you in here. If you just follow,
You reap what you sow.
you do. And sometimes,
Get 'em in there.
yeah, and sometimes we, by not cultivating the children,
Mhm.
We talk about reaping while you're sowing, but not cultivating the children to look at themselves, look at their responsibility. Okay, we're a separated family, and now I got a mom and a dad with two different homes.
Mhm.
It's what I do. It's what I have.
Mhm.
We have to make it work, and the only way they can do that is
Mhm.
with parents on the same page. That's our message, to be
That
on the
is a
same page.
huge, huge importance.
Mhm.
When the kids come home and it's different, or they go back to the other parent and it's different, the child uses that, plays it, and it's really dangerous for our kids, for us parents, not to be like-minded one with another. That the most important goal is to raise our children to be a productive part of society.
And it's responsibility,
It is.
you know, and if we don't let them go from house to house back and forth trying to divide the parenting, then we're going to start some consistency in their lives. Because as we all know, when they start to get older and then they become more defiant, and they know if they go to dad after they get in trouble at school, dad's okay.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have, you know, I'm not going to get in trouble at home.
Yeah, just don't do that again, 90th time.
One of my biggest fears was getting in trouble at school, having to go home and face mom and dad.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I come from a divorced family, and it was the same thing. You know, luckily my mom and dad were on the same page.
Right.
Mhm.
So whatever one got, I got from both of them.
Mhm.
And sometimes that was a little like double punishment, but still, it made me think, do I want to get this?
Mhm.
What are going to be the consequences for my actions?
Yeah. Mhm.
And sometimes I didn't want those consequences.
Right.
But I got that from having parents who couldn't live together anymore, but decided to raise their children together,
Sure.
separately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it worked. It can
Good
work.
way to end the message today. It's raising our children separately but yet together.
Mhm.
That's good. Well, Mike, your books are available as well
Yes.
on our website, and do you have any other, on the Believers Business Center's website, or do you have any other areas that are open for ordering your books that you'd like to
They can
address?
go through my company, which is Blue Seahorse Incorporated. There's a website, blueseahorse.org, that people can order or ask for the books through there, or through your website. They can get them on that. And there's a third one coming out
Mhm.
that is titled "Why Do I Behave the Way I Do,"
Sure. Yes.
which falls in line with what we're doing now
Mhm.
and helps answer some of those questions.
Mhm.
But yeah, they can either call me or call Carrie or order through their websites and get the books.
And my
And
books.
also, I might mention that we're gonna put this show on YouTube under the Believers Business Center your page, and we'll put your websites on there and the information, and they can just click on and listen to us talk, and then click on and find out more, because you're both doing great work in the community, you know, in therapies, and I know you're both very experienced, and well, you know, just look for Believers Business Center on Facebook, Carrie Sluiter or Mike Siver, and we'll get more information.
Well, the biggest goal for Carrie and I is to bring the message to parents.
Sure.
If your relationship is not working,
Mhm.
first of all, try and make it work.
Mhm.
And if you can get involved with the Word of God, life is not complicated. We make it complicated.
Mhm.
Life is pretty simple. We complicate the heck out of it.
That's right. Yeah.
And if we can follow the Word and keep it simple, the marriage more than likely will survive. But if it doesn't, we've got stuff that we want to offer.
Right.
Great. Well, we'll see you next time. And for Carrie Sluiter and Mike Siver and myself, Bill Lindeman, we'll see you next week.
See
Thank
next
you.
week.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Great. It was great.